the story continues to evolve. Every time I come to San Antonio, I have fond memories of my old friend, now departed, Kevin Young. Kevin and I used to sit around Hong Kong and other places, and one of the things we talked about, he said, in one of the Mexican reports, it talks about, it's a post-battle report, and it says, among the Alamo slain was a black woman. Kevin, I'd give a month's salary to know who she was and what she was doing there. Have you ever heard about this? Did you know that the black woman was killed at the Alamo? Yeah, John does. Well, we now think we know who she was. And it's a fascinating story. Patrick Henryhundin was a native of Virginia. As a young man, he moved to Kentucky, married. His wife died in 1825, and he came to Texas, settled up near Navasota. Well, in the fall of 1835, and we don't know what he was doing there, but Patrick Henryhundin was in New Orleans. He may have been there on a recruiting mission. He may have been part of the people who recruited the New Orleans Grays. Who's the guy from Nacogdoches?
Adolphus Stern.
Adolphus Stern. He may have been there with Adolphus Stern raising the New Orleans Grays. Well, at any rate, while
flipping that
mental
card catalog.
Your 64-year-old brain. I know what that's the cards are getting a little brown around the edges. But at any rate, while he was in New Orleans, he met and fell in love, apparently, with a slave girl named Sarah. Okay? Now, Sarah was the property of Ezekiel Hayes, a local resident of New Orleans. And when Hardin lit out for Texas, well, Sarah went with him. And Hayes was not happy about that and filed suit against the absent Herndon. Says, you stole my property. So there's actually a case saying, Hayes suing. Okay, well, let me see here. On December 15th, by December 15th, Herndon is back in Texas and he joins the Texas Army at Bayer. And on January 14th, 1836, he joined Captain John Chenoweth's company. Now, Chenoweth was part of the New Orleans Grays, so that's why I think he may have been involved with raising the New Orleans Grays. And on January 19th, 1836, Herndon may have been one of the volunteers who accompanied James Bowie to the island. Well, when Houston sent Bowie over to it. We were talking about that. Now, we do know that Herndon died alongside the other Alamo defenders on March 6. And Mexican post-battle reports document the body of a black woman found on the southwest corner gun platform. You know where that is? Just across the street. Now, this was likely Herndon's Sarah. Since she was not with the other women and children who had taken refuge in the church sacristy, it is entirely possible, Steve Hardman thinks, that Sarah helped Herndon man the 18-pounder and fell alongside her lover. Gee, we know everything there is to know about the Alamo. Now, I'm not a novelist, but if I were, boy, this is just waiting to be turned into a tearjerker bodice ripper. I mean, it's got all the ingredients.
I think that points out something good, that when I first came here in in '96 that the fervor of we want to know about the Alamo, and what people really meant was we want to know about Davy Crockett, we want to know about Jim Bowie, we want to know about Travis, and then William C. Davis's book came out, Three Roads to the Alamo. It's still the best biography on those three people, and it pretty much said, well, you want to know about them, here it is.
Yeah. I mean, on the day that book was published, it instantly became the best biography of all three of those gentlemen. And while there have been standalone biographies since then, nobody can touch it.
But what it sort of forced people that were doing research to go, well, I can't compete with William C. Davis. What can I look at? And so they begin to look at, when I look at the Alamo, it's almost like a movie. You got your principals, you got your villain, you got your supporting actors, and then you got your cast of, extras. And that's the garrison and the Mexican army. And so now we're getting to the point where we're going, well, who were those people? Now,
it's kind of like a John Ford movie where, the secondary characters were just as interesting as the main guys, but, you cared about them too.
That one of the things that we found, and again, why is it still relevant, is that it evidently is relevant to people, because when we had veterans who had come back from Iraq or Afghanistan, they would almost always tell us, we were in this little village, and it was made up of mud huts. Guess what we called it? And it was the Alamo. And I had one group, I think from the 3rd Artillery, talking about being on the Syrian border with Iraq, and the police station had been taken over. So they were sent in to this compound, a mud hut compound, and they were there for 2 weeks. And they said one of the things is that the insurgents had a mortar on a cart pulled by a donkey, and they would go around and fire. But again, it was, we called it the Alamo. And so it has become one of those cultural touch points that you don't really have to know the story of the Alamo to know what the meaning is. One of the things about being a relevant story, and we're going to segue into that and some other questions, is that we talked about how if you just concentrate on the traditional story, that it's, for some people, well, that can't have happened. That can't be, there's got to be more to it than that. And it is. One of the things that we do to try to make it more relevant is we try to attach it to the local history. That the Battle of the Alamo is San Antonio history. And that sounds sort of like, well, of course it is. Mm-hmm. But you try to tell somebody from San Antonio that the Battle of the Alamo is about San Antonio, and many people are going, no, that's U.S. history. That doesn't have anything to do with us. And then, you expand that and go, well, it's regional history. And, of course, Texas is a region, but it's also U.S. history. And then what's the other region? It's Mexican history. Mm-hmm. And so how do you make it relevant is you have to tie it to a bigger story. And talking about the evidence-based story being very interesting, maybe more interesting than the traditional story, is when you start looking at, I didn't realize that what was happening in Mexico affected the Alamo. I didn't realize that something that Napoleon Bonaparte did shape what happened at the Alamo. And so it's asking people to look at it in a broader perspective.
Well, a lot of people are surprised to find out that the Mexican soldiers attacking the Alamo were carrying British Brown Bess muskets that had been used at Waterloo in 1815. Same weapons.